Alrighty, everybody, welcome to Smile Girl. Don't be nervous. I am Juana. I am the mom.
And I'm Esperanza. I'm the daughter.
And we are Smile. Generally, with every episode, we start off with a listing of all of the holidays that are coming up this next week. And for the last couple of weeks, we have had no holidays. Mm-hmm. I think we're all just super excited because it's finally summer. Summer. Right? I love Olaf. So what I did want to talk about though is we just passed National Piercing Day. We always record these early, and you got a new piercing, huh? Yeah. Tell us about it. Well, first of all, tell us what you have, and you know what did you get, and what else do you want? Oh my gosh, I totally forgot my nose ring. Anyways, Go ahead.
So right now before I only had my ears pierced.
Right. And you've had those since
And I've had my ears for a while.
Yeah, I think you were 6 or 7 months that you got those done.
And then I got my nose done almost a year ago.
Okay.
July 27th.
Okay.
And then I also got my belly button done the same day.
Yes.
But it got super infected, so I had to take it out. And then I just got it redone 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try it again.
Yeah. Any suggestions that you have?
Clean it. And try not to snag it as much as possible.
Find a good piercer.
Don't
find a legit piercer.
Don't just get excited and just go to whoever's available. So
you got yours underage. Would you?
No, I wasn't.
Your nose. I think it was underage.
Mm-mm.
I would. No, your tattoos were underage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. My first professional tattoo was underage. But of course, Mom signed it off and everything. And that's that one.
Yeah, those are the ones we got together.
Yep.
Imagine.
Yep. Yep. And then my bestie from work also got it with us.
Yeah, Miss Olivia. Big shout out to Miss Olivia. We love you so much.
And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 other tattoos. And those ones are not professional. Don't do that. That's not smart. I love my tattoos, but they...
I mean, they have significance, otherwise you wouldn't have got them.
Yes.
Right.
And they definitely have meaning and memories connected with them, but definitely not smart to not do it professionally. So.
Yeah. All right. I just have my ears and my nose tattooed. Mm-hmm. I wanted my eyebrow pierced forever when I was younger. And then I started getting into makeup, and I was like, that's not going to work because I fight with my eyebrows so much anyways. Yeah. So, that's not going to work.
I want to get my back dermals so bad.
Yeah. That's on your lower back, right?
Yep. Because I have my back dimples.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get those pierced, and then that'll be the origin of my next tattoo.
Yeah. Did you know that everybody has those?
Yeah, I did know that.
I didn't know that until quite a few years ago. But yeah, I was like, what? No. What?
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. All right, so a little bit about us to start off the show. Remember to like, share, and hit the bell for notifications for when our episodes drop. We did have a space in between because we were trying to get back on schedule with recording and having the episodes drop. We kind of put a lot on Anthony when we relaunched because we're like, hey, we did a status update video and we gave you an episode. So here you go. And you have 2 days to get it all done.
Yeah.
So that episode is late in dropping, but it will drop. It should drop the week before you see this one. And then we should be back on schedule where we're recording on Sunday, and then he's got 10 days to edit. So that's how far in advance we do record. We record Sundays, and then Anthony gets the recording either Sunday or Monday, and then the episode drops that following Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And that gives him enough time to do the edits and put all the wording and pop-ups and funnies that are in there, because it's a lot to do just in a super small time frame.
Yeah.
So he does quite a bit, and he puts a lot of love and work into these, especially when he's making Mama blow up houses and stuff. So
fucking asshole.
It's so funny though. The audience loves it. If you love those, drop a comment below and let us know what you think, because he makes fun of all of us. I think I had like a hurricane or a tornado or something. Really? So yeah, because I sneezed and the next scene was just like winds just blowing off houses and like ruining like stores flying. Yeah, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, nobody fucking breathe, otherwise Anthony will make fun of you.
Yeah,
so.
It's gonna be a meme.
Yeah. Fuck.
Alright, so we have a pretty great episode. This was one of the episodes that we had done before, but there was no sound because we didn't realize our mic just was like, man, I'm out. It just quit working. So we have recorded this episode previously, but this is such a big place in our hearts that it really hits home with us. And this, so we just wanted to give you a trigger warning that this episode is about racism, fear, segregation, racism and bigotry. In a couple of weeks, we will have one on segregation. So if you like this one and want to be involved in that conversation, drop us a note below and let us know how excited you are. Well, not excited, because nobody's excited about segregation. I mean, some might be, but it's not okay.
If you're excited to hear the episode.
If you're excited to hear the episode, yeah, thanks. I was like, where am I going with this? Drop us a note below and let us know. Let us know if you have any personal stories as well. And because we would really like to, the more we talk about it, the more it's out in the open and the more discussions can be had, right? And that's the whole point of doing this show, is to, bring these issues to light and start having discussions so that we can change things, because we can't change cycles if we don't know about them, right? So, this episode, trigger warning, is about racism, 9/11, and the Holocaust. Those are fascinating points of history for both Mama and I. I have always been fascinated about the Holocaust, just not necessarily, obviously necessarily the deaths of all of the Jews and the others that were included in all of that with Hitler. He was an amazing man. But the psychological aspect of all of that, how one man really influenced entire nations to really sign off and was like, hey, this is a great idea. That is just super fascinating to me, in the, mind control and the herd mentality and all of that. That is just super crazy moment in history that I have latched onto that I really find interesting. And yours is 9/11. Why is that so fascinating for you?
Well, it was kind of shortly before I was born.
Right.
And I am convinced that I was part of 9/11. I was one of the...
It was like a past life for you? Okay.
I've always been super fascinated with the way that people, the way that their minds just switched from, oh, this is just another day, to, oh my god, I'm jumping out of a window.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced I was one of the ones that were jumping out of the window, because I've always just like that. The Twin Towers are my everything, and I know that there was other flights that were involved during 9/11, with the ones that were in Pennsylvania and the one that went to the Pentagon. But the Twin Towers have always just been a super huge thing for me. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So in this series, we are going through quotes from the House of Night series. This is a series of, I think 19, I really need to get that number down. 19 to 21 books, somewhere around there is the entire series. It's the House of Night series, written by PC and Kristen Cast. They are a mother and daughter duo. And this is one of the quotes that was taken from these books. This particular book comes out of Untamed, page 88, and I think Untamed is book 4, I think, in that series. And so we are at the beginning of the series. There are some spoiler alerts as well. When we go through this episode, we will be talking about events that happened in the book before and after. So if you have not read up to this point and you don't want any spoiler alerts, pause and view all of the previous episodes beforehand, get a little bit further in the book, and then come back because we don't want to spoil the series for you. But just wanted to give that out there. So this quote is from Untamed, page 88. The quote is, "Remember the lesson our ancestors learned with their precious blood. Fear and bigotry are bred from isolation and ignorance." So Shekinah is one of the high priestesses on the High Council, and she's addressing the House of Night, saying that even though the murders of the teachers that have happened to seal off the school would perpetuate the declaration of war, and that's something they want to avoid. They are protected by the Sons of Erebus, and she wants their lives to continue on as normally as possible by interacting with the community and to remember the lessons learned from their ancestors. Now, in the book, the lessons that were learned from their ancestors is they're obviously vampires, right? And then you have the humans. And the humans were so scared of the power and money and, you know, the beautifulness of all of the vampire species that they were on a mission to kill and eradicate all of them. And so way back when, and what she's talking about is that the vampires were almost eradicated. In this particular series, vampires are not created. They're, you know, like, you can't bite, you know, someone. They're chosen because they're marked. And so a tracker, which is a vampire, gets a...
Sorry, guys. I'm snagging.
You scared me.
I'm snagging.
Once again, the new tattoo, or the new piercing, so it's getting caught in her jeans, so give her a second to readjust. But so in this particular series, a vampire adult who has fully done the transition becomes a martyr.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, you're like ruining the studio.
I just dropped a mouse. Damn.
So, an example of this is there is one of the nerd herd becomes a marker later. And I'm not going to tell you who that is because I'm not going to spoil that for you. That'll come later. So he becomes a marker, and he has like this unbelievable pull in order to leave, in order to go find who he's marking. And even if you're marked, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get to become a vampire. Like, you still have to go through the change, which is why they have this House of Night, like finishing school is what this is. Okay. So the article that we picked for this episode is titled "Coping with the 10th Anniversary of 9/11, Muslim Americans' Sadness, Fear, and Anger." This article is found in the 2013 Volume 27, Number 5 issue of Cognition and Emotion, pages 932 to 941. So, before we jump into this, why don't you tell us a little bit about 9/11 for those that maybe don't know what 9/11 is?
Got you.
I'm so glad you were prepared. I didn't even look at me, lead me right in. I didn't even know what you had prepared.
All right. So there were 4 commercial planes that were involved.
What year was this? Let's get started with that.
2001.
9/11, 2001.
September 11th, 2001.
Okay, so that was 4 years before you were born.
Yes.
Okay.
Anthony was 2.
Anthony was not born yet. Anthony was born in 2003. So I remember exactly. This was quite the day for me.
Okay, so let me do my facts and then we'll tell your story.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were 4 commercial planes that were involved in 9/11. The attacks killed 2,977 people that were from 93 different nations.
Damn.
Yep.
I didn't know that part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2,753 people were killed. Okay, let me restart that. I'm so sorry, guys. 2,753 people were killed during the New York attack, which were the Twin Towers. 184 people were killed at the 184 people were killed at the Washington, D.C. attack, which was the Pentagon. 40 people were killed on Flight 93, which was at the attack in the Pennsylvania field that were... the conspiracy is that the Flight 93 was heading to the White House before the passengers took over the plane to attempt to save the other passengers. Flight 175 struck the South Tower between 78th and the 84th floor. Flight 11 struck the North Tower between the 93rd and 99th floor. Took about 10 months to clean up the attack. They were working on it 24 hours a day. 343 firefighters died on 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. There is a 9/11 memorial in New York where the towers were. And the memorial is to
memorialize.
Thank you. All the lives that were stolen that day. The Al-Qaeda was the group of the men that planned the whole attack. American Airlines and United Airlines were the airlines. That's a lot of airlines. Airlines that the planes belonged to during 9/11. 2 planes were American Airlines and 2 were United. The guys that saved Flight 93 were Todd Beamer, Tom Burnett, and Jeremy Glick.
Okay. All right. Now, I know a lot of the younger generations don't understand this, and maybe you do with all of the school shootings and things that are happening now. Mm-hmm. Like, when a significant event like that happens on U.S. soil, you remember exactly what you were doing that day, because it becomes so ingrained. And I distinctly remember this day. I was, I think, like 19. I was going to be 20. No, I had just turned 20. I had just turned 20. And I was working at the State of Wyoming Department of Family Services, and I was getting ready for my day to go in and do some supervised visits for that day. That was a particular day full. I was booked of different supervised visits. I wasn't in the office, so I was just getting ready to go to just start off my day to go do some visits. And as I do now, I sat down and, well, I guess not now, but back when they played music on MTV and VH1 and stuff, they were 3 channels together. It was like VH1, MTV, BET, and then CMT, right? And so they were like all in a row, like way back when. So I threw on a music channel and I was seeing what was going on, but I thought it was a movie, and so I clicked, and like the same thing was on all the channels. I was like, dude, like what the fuck, right? I'm just trying to listen to some music to get ready, as I'm sitting on the floor with my coffee table with all my makeup spread around, because, I still do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find some music, and I was like, what's going on? And like I said, I thought it was like a commercial or a movie or something. And then I started like actually listening, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? So I called Jamie, who was my coworker at the time.
And you were living in Cheyenne.
I was living in Cheyenne. Yes. So Cheyenne has the F.E. Warren Air Force Base right there, right off the highway, like right off 25. Like you literally pass the entrance gate right off Highway or I-20 Interstate 25. So we were having some talks before in school, like a few years back, and I think Cheyenne was listed as top 5.
Yeah, I think we're number 3.
I think we're like 3 or 5 of the places to be bombed because we have the nuclear weapons, right? So I was like, oh my God, like what does this mean? And like we've been attacked, and what happens? Like this was the first like real crisis that had ever happened in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I called Jamie, who is my coworker, and her husband worked on the base. So she was like, yeah, just come over. And so I canceled every single one of my visits except one. And I spent the day at her house, and she was trying to get a hold of her husband. She couldn't get a hold of her husband. He actually did end up getting a hold of her way later. I mean, like, let's see, I had my visits started between like 8 and 9, so I was getting ready between like 7, 6:37. So it was early, and so I had spent the whole day with her, and she couldn't get a hold of her husband. She was, panicked, as she should be, right? Her husband's in the military. We don't know what's going on. Can't get a hold of him. Don't know if anybody's been deployed. Don't know where they're sending anybody. They put the the Air Force Base on red level, and I can't remember what level that was. I think it was like level 5, I think. And so it was red. My whole life it's only been green, and so I didn't know. I had never seen it. And so we were driving. As I was driving to Jamie's house, I took the highway because I lived on the south side. Took the highway to her house because she lived on the north side to that elementary school, like where Anthony used to go. And as I'm passing by, I see all of the red signs. There is danger, no exit, proceed with caution. There are signs everywhere. There's barricades put up, and they set it up where if you're looking at the highway, they look like they're in a row, but they set it up so that you have to do sharp turns to get around to get into the base gate. There was massive military people everywhere around the base. We found out later that there was massive military everywhere around our airport that we had there too. And the airport is like in the middle of the town, right? And so that was all barricaded. They were all on red high alert level. And we didn't end up hearing from her husband until, my gosh, I'm so sorry. Until like, man, I think it was like 3:30 or 4. I mean, so we had spent all day, she was blowing up his phone trying to figure out like what was going on. In the meantime, we were watching everything that was happening on TV, and we were watching all of this footage of people jumping out of windows, people coming out and they're seriously injured. They're watching the firefighters and all of the emergency personnel go in and then still have them in there while the towers are crumbling. It was rough. It was a super emotional time. It was so heartbreaking to see everything that was going on. And the only question every single person, the only thing we could ask was why? Why is this happening? What is happening? Who could have done this? Like, what are we going to do now? Does this mean we're going to go to war? Like, we had never, the last attack that had happened on U.S. soil was Pearl Harbor. And then we were in World War II, So we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know who had done it. Nobody had said anything. And we were just beyond, like, just beside ourselves to figure out, like, what is happening? Like, we're in America. We're supposed to be, like, untouchable. And this is, like, the place that everybody wants to be. And then all of a sudden, we were so vulnerable. And what happened as an aftermath, after everything was said and done and all of the towers crumbled, it was like all of USA just went silent. And it was just that we were all processing it. And then all of a sudden we all came up and we were like, okay, what do we need to do to help? And that was the best time to probably be an American. Is there were donation boxes, there were businesses that were donating funds, like everybody wanted to help. And we were donating everything. Food, clothes, money. There was like this worldwide rotation on what firehouses were going to send personnel down to the Twin Towers to see like who could help. And the biggest story that I remember from there is Dave Buscemi, I think is his name, who is an actor on like Con Air and does numerous other movies. He was a firefighter before he was an actor, and he was on site as well. So there wasn't anybody that wasn't impacted by this, because if you were impacted by the fall of the Twin Towers or by the White House or the Pentagon or whatever, you were impacted on the back end, because then your family was going, your loved ones were going, you had people deploying, you had, the military where we didn't know who was going to be called out. There were people, and it was split. There were people who were scared to be called out, and there were people that were like, let me go now.
Yeah.
And so it was a very traumatic time for everybody when that happened here. Yeah. So that's, you never forget those, when those big things happen, like you never forget like what you were doing.
Right.
It was pretty intense. So, my gosh, I am so sorry, guys. I don't know what is going on.
So, I know, like, my generation doesn't really have
a big thing like that. Right.
And I mean, like, we have the school shootings, like, we have, well, you guys had your school shooting in Colorado.
Yeah, so
Columbine
happened my senior year of high school, and we also had a suicide that year. So in the back of our high school yearbook pages, we had a 2-page memorial for Columbine. So we had all of the victims from Columbine, and then we had like this big mural on the second page and saying like in remembrance of. And then on the next page over, we had a remembrance page for the guy who committed suicide. And I'm not going to put his name out there, but I miss him very much. He was a good man. Just got wrapped up in some situations, and just couldn't make it out of that. And so yeah, we lost him, but. Yeah, we did have Columbine our senior year, and that was like things like that had happened, in like Texas and Kentucky and like those other places like far away from Wyoming. Columbine was
right next door.
Like I lived in Cheyenne at that point in time, and Fort Collins is 45 minutes away from Cheyenne, and everybody for the weekends is in Colorado. We're in Fort Collins, and we're, doing things, or we're in Denver, and we're going to, Waterworld, or, the aquarium, or, like we're going to concerts or whatever. So that, like, Colorado was like our backyard, like we went to go play in our backyard. And so that really hit home, and we I believe I was in my sociology class, when it was announced that the shooting was going on, and we watched it. And of course, that's something you want to talk about in your sociology class. And so we discussed, I think it was a blessing for me to be in that class, because it helped really like process what was happening, why would something elevate to this level? What were they thinking? And so we used that as our class time to really process the tragedy. Not like, oh my God, like all of these kids died, and like they died for nothing, and they did. But that class really helped process the bigger picture and how tragic of a circumstance this was.
And I mean, like, we've had our school shootings. Like, we had that one that happened in the elementary school. But again, that was nowhere near Wyoming.
Right.
So, I mean, like, us Wyoming generation don't have anything that has impacted us that bigly.
Right. I think, on a totally other note, I think that's why I think your generation is not in touch with how special of a nation we are. I think there's a lot of division going on with your generation right now, and I don't think a lot of them are really big issues.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they don't have something like this to really rein in that perspective of, it's one thing when you're losing a couple of people here and there. And I'm not diminishing anybody's death in any way, shape, or form. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the perspective is really there when you're losing thousands of people at one time.
Yeah.
That hits different in your soul, as opposed to.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we've had our suicides and deaths and murders and things like that here in town. Like,
your generation is really struggling.
Yeah.
Really, and not just here.
No.
Like
everywhere.
Worldwide,
and I mean, like,
I think. U.S. at least.
In Casper, like, we've had some serious shit happen in the last month or two.
Yeah, we've had
3 murders.
Juvenile deaths.
3. Yeah, there was 2 shootings on that Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
And then we've had Bobby.
Yeah, and that was a stabbing.
Yep, and that was
all done by juveniles.
Yep.
These were all juveniles.
Yep. And I've personally had 3 friends that have died
from suicide.
Well, one was just a medical issue.
Oh, that's right.
And then I've had 2 suicides.
One of those was a freak situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just the mental illness and the non-support that your generation is not receiving is really doing a toll on your generation.
Yeah.
And that makes me really scared because I think your generation isn't being heard.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're losing a lot of our generation.
Yeah, there's not going to... It's going to be like the disappearing generation, because there's not going to be many who will make it to the end.
Yeah.
And that is really horrifying and tragic.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
So jumping back to this article, sorry, there's, like I said, this is a really heavy episode, and so we will be talking a lot about, death and dying. So please, if you need to take a minute, please stop and then come back to the discussion, because these discussions are really important to have.
Yes.
So in the USA, the FBI recorded a 16-fold increase in hate crimes against Muslim Americans from 2001 to 2002, at which point the amount of hate crimes plateaued. Now, I also remember part of what I didn't mention is right after 9/11, there was so much hatred towards Muslim Americans because of the information coming out that Al-Qaeda was the one that was responsible for these attacks. And so everybody's like, oh, it's the Muslims. And you're like, whoa, like, that's not what was said.
Yeah.
What was said was it was Al-Qaeda. It didn't have shit to do with Muslim Americans. Mm-hmm. It was just that organization.
It just happened that they have... Like, it just happens that they were Muslim.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that every Muslim was a part of Al-Qaeda. It doesn't happen, that's not what they said.
Yeah. So there were Muslim Americans that were in America and had been in America for years and had done amazing things in America that were stepping out and were like, hey, this isn't everybody. We are not included in that. Mm-hmm. And the biggest one that comes to my memory is Paula Abdul. Mm-hmm. We love Paula Abdul, and she is amazing. If you don't know who Paula Abdul is, we will put up a picture for you. She is beautiful, and she's all of like 4'11", right? And she started out as a cheerleader for the Lakers, and then she became a huge choreographer. She choreographed for Janet Jackson, and then she choreographed all of her stuff when she became a singer and actress, and did all of those things. And she had always been huge. She was groundbreaking in music videos because she was the first one who put together cartoon footage with an actual into a music video. So we'll drop the link for Opposites Attract for that video because it's really cool. It was the first video that had been done in that aspect, music video, because the only thing that had been close to that is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that was a little bit different. But so she was out here just breaking, doing landmark stuff, and she got out and was like, we are not all like that. And that was when people started to realize, oh my God, I didn't know she was Muslim American. And I didn't either. And so I'm like, oh, duh, her last name
is Abdul.
Right? But I grew up in a Title I school just outside the base, right? And so we had all of the different cultures coming in from the base, plus all of the minorities from the West Side in our school. So culture was an everyday thing, the sky is blue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, it didn't occur to me, that the man that raised me was black, his wife was white, and I'm Hispanic, right? And so, we had Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, and we had Germans as exchange students in our high school, and so culture was not a thing that was foreign to me,
right?
And I know that in some remote locations in Wyoming that is a thing, but color isn't something that just automatically comes to mind for me to be like, oh, well, you're this, you know what I mean? Because I'm automatically like, oh, you're a nice person or you're a dick.
Right.
That's what I go to automatically. It doesn't have anything to do with what nationality you are or anything like that. That's just not something that occurs to me to start off with. So after 9/11 hit, a lot of people were like, Muslims did this and Muslims did that. And then you had the other Muslims coming out saying like, no, that wasn't, we love America. We've been here, we came here for a better life or whatever they came here for. And they were pleading for their lives, and they were very racially profiled in the airports because of what happened. They were beaten. They were, their houses were demolished and, just totally trashed. And all of that was unacceptable because people were hearing what they wanted to hear as opposed to what was said.
Right.
So they kind of took it and just ran with it. And so there was this whole thing. And so this article was a follow-up from the 10th anniversary of obviously after 9/11. So several other studies have documented an increase in prejudice, discrimination, and other forms of unfair treatment toward Muslim Americans since 9/11. Discrimination is frightening because it implies uncertainty and unpredictability about the implications of unfair treatment. Fear is the emotion that most clearly signals a sense of threat, uncertainty, and insecurity. Do you agree with that?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
I'm just trying to get it to where it's not snagging.
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Just not trying to flash or anything.
Yeah.
Fear is the emotion that most clearly signals a sense of threat, uncertainty, and insecurity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think so too. Fear is kind of like that anger, right? So anger is a secondary emotion, and I think a lot of times fear is that primary emotion to like, oh, it's different. What am I going to do? Right. I don't know how to deal with this situation, and so you go to anger. Yeah. And if you want to hear that discussion about anger, that was last week's episode, so please click on that one. Anger will also be evoked in reaction to a concern with discrimination because anger is commonly felt in response to negative treatment of the self or an important in-group. Anger and another focused emotion is elicited when an individual elevates negative treatment as unfair and undeserved. Fear is likely rumination, as the emotion is characterized by hypervigilance. Fear has also been shown to be associated with wanting to escape danger and threat. Fear should therefore predict avoidance behavior. Anger is a more empowering emotion compared to sadness or fear, since anger typically motivates the individual to do something about the negative situation rather than remaining passive or escaping. So what they're talking about here is, because, studies tend to use these huge words in explaining these situations. What they're saying is the dynamic between anger and fear, right? You have one set of the population who is going to use their anger in order to deal with their fear of a certain group or a certain being or a certain person, okay? So in response to that anger, the population that is receiving that anger is going to be in fear because that anger is very often unpredictable, right? You don't know what that other person is going to do. You don't know what that other person is going to say. You don't know what that other person is going to treat you like. And so you resort to fear because it is the unknown, right? You don't know what's going to happen. So as a result of that, you either do the 4 things that we had talked about last week. So it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If you're backed into a corner, you're always going to fight. If you have nowhere to go, you're going to fight. If you, there's more of them than there is than you, you're either going to run or you're going to fight. But if you're backed into a corner, once again, you're going to fight. And so this just continually escalates because if you...
I freeze.
Yeah. Because if you fight, then you are justifying their thoughts about you. Right? If you run, that also justifies. If you respond in any way, shape, or form, any of that behavior is going to justify what the original population was thinking. So what do you do in those situations? Right? Because you can't talk to them.
Yeah.
Because they're in a state of not listening. Right? If they're in that anger and violent stage, they're not going to listen. So what do you do? Right? So that's the kind of situation that these Muslim Americans were in after 9/11.
Right.
Muslim Americans are unlikely to protest against their in-group's unfair treatment in order to avoid being seen as self-interested or unsympathetic to the anniversary. Sadness was the most intensely felt emotion by the participants. So what that is saying there is that if you see a fellow Muslim American being harmed or being threatened or, aggressive behavior going toward them, you're not going to jump in and be like, hey, you need to stop.
Right.
Right? Because then the intention is directed towards you, and then you will have to take that abuse. But that also holds to what I just said before, that any reaction that you have is going to validate their thoughts. Oh, well, you guys just stick together, don't you? Oh, that's because you were in it too. And all of this is totally unlogical. It's illogical.
Right.
But these thought processes happen when you're wrapped up in those feelings. Right? So
okay, hang on.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sorry, guys.
No.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. She's really struggling. I'm so sorry.
Okay. So, one of these bullet points that says, fear should therefore predict avoidance behavior. I don't really agree with that.
So, it does, though. Because if you are afraid of a situation, you're not going to do it. Right?
But
if you're afraid of spiders, you're not going to go walk up to a spider and be like, hey, buddy. If you are afraid of water, you're going to avoid the water. You're going to avoid lakes and oceans and rivers and stuff like that.
But don't we say all the time to do something daily that scares you?
Right.
To grow.
Right. But those are the smaller fears. When you're fearing for your life.
Right. Okay.
Then that is a different situation.
That's true.
That turns to avoidance.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Okay. So, that spider situation, if you've been bitten by a spider before and it was a brown recluse or a black widow, those are hospital trips.
Yeah.
Right? And if you got bit by a brown recluse, one of the brown spiders, because my words are not working. That leads to flesh damage.
Yeah, it can kill you.
So you've got visible reminders. So when you see a spider, how are you going to react? You're not going to be like, oh,
hey, buddy.
It's not the same. It's a different kind. Zero fucks.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not going to care about that. You're going to be gone.
Yeah,
right? Nobody's going to know why you left. They will just know that you're gone.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's that's the avoidance that they're talking about. Okay. So the anniversary of 9/11 evoked an equally intense concern about the discrimination Muslim Americans face. This concern predicted feelings of fear and anger, revealing a sense of threat and danger among the participants. Coped with the negative concerns and emotions raised by the 9/11 anniversary with a mixture of negative and positive responses. Rumination, avoidance of public places, and religious coping were the effects of that, right? Rumination prolongs psychological distress, and avoidance of public places may have exacerbated participants' loneliness and isolation in the days preceding the anniversary. Isolation has been shown to be associated with depression. Participants also tried to seek solace in their religion, with religious coping being the most frequent coping response. And that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you can't go in public, if you can't go to the grocery store, if you can't, go to the gym, if you can't do all of those normal things that are your general coping behaviors because of the fear of being attacked or retaliated against or have aggressive behavior come towards you because of your color or your religion or what they think is your religion, you're not gonna want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? So what better place to go than your religious building, right? Whatever that may be.
Right.
Because you have other people that are like you, generally, have the same beliefs as you, and know that you had nothing to do with all this other shit going on out here.
Right.
Right? And so that is where you're going to find your comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Sadness explained.
Sadness explained the association between a concern with loss and rumination. Fear was the emotion with the most negative consequence for coping, as it explained the association between a concern with discrimination and both rumination and avoidance of public places. In contrast, though, anger was the most empowering emotion for the participants, as this emotion explained the association between a concern with discrimination and seeking support from one's religious group. With the exception of anger, research on stigma has examined the mediating role of rumination and isolation in the relationship between stigma and psychological distress among stigmatized groups. Religion can be an important resource in coping with anger. Religious coping implies an inward focus because the individual taps into the resources that his or her own religion provides, like praying. Religious coping to predict increased levels of well-being and enhance relationships with others among Muslims from different countries. Religious coping contributed to post-traumatic growth in response to unfair treatment among Muslim Americans. Coping with anger about discrimination by seeking solace in one's religion was likely to be particularly beneficial for the Muslim American participants in the present study. So they, in order to get through all of the feelings that they had. Whoa. Oh my God.
Sorry. No.
In order to really process and get through their feelings with the anniversary of 9/11, they had to really dig deep, man. Mm-hmm. And whether they agreed with it or didn't agree with it or wasn't a part of it or didn't even know anybody or what, were as blindsided as everybody else were in the U.S., they all still had to process it. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter what side you were on, it still needed to be processed because of the actions of the Americans after the attacks.
Well, we just passed our 20-year anniversary too a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I was in school and we did a memorial on it, like it was deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I know when we were living in Laramie, we would go to the fire station that was down the street from our house.
And they had a memorial.
And the firefighters were going up and down their stairs in remembrance of the firefighters who had lost their lives. And, of course, the other people who had lost their lives as well.
Yeah.
And, every memorial that we go to, they read out their names. And there's not a dry eye in sight. Because I know I'm a mess when I go to those. We release balloons. Mm-hmm. We used to release balloons in memory of. And it's a hard thing, when I just think of how the Holocaust was as well. After the concentration camps were freed and taken care of, and they had arrested and taken care of the Nazi soldiers that were there, they had brought, the German people who were living just outside of the Nazi camps, outside of the concentration camps, and there were families that said, I didn't know this was going on. And that is crazy to me because you had ash falling on your houses and on your cars the entire time, and it never occurred to you
what was going on
to look into it, And granted, there was a lot of Germans that did save a lot of Jews and other people who were running. I think of Schindler's List, which is a fabulous movie, and I cry every time I watch it. I think of Shining Through, which is my favorite movie of all time. And you have Jews that were going in that were acting as spies, and there were Germans who were helping hide and buying Jews in order to save their lives. And
like Anne Frank.
Yeah, Anne Frank, and her story and the kind of life that had happened because of all of the fake propaganda that was going around, and you bring that to current day and you look at the wars that we have going on. You've got the Middle East. We're always fighting in the Middle East, and it's all about oil. And you can see both sides of the argument. You can see the more recent one that we're always sending money to. Oh my gosh.
Israel?
Uvalde? Yeah, Israel. Israel is one that's going on, and there's so many things to be considered with war. Like, why are we doing it? Why are we in it? What are we gaining from it? What is the other?
What are we losing?
Person's perspective. Yeah, what are we losing? How does that affect our economy? How does that affect our family makeup? How does that affect our goods, or shipments coming in and out, when we're fighting with different nations. And I think it's a really, really, really big, it's not just this one particular situation, this 9/11 situation, this Holocaust situation. It's not just this situation. It's everything else that is around it that is impacting the start, the middle, and the end of that,
we're still being affected by the 9/11.
Yeah.
With the airport security, with...
Yeah. TSA requirements did never change back.
Yeah.
They did never change back.
And they're not ever going to.
No. But now we have planes coming up missing.
Yeah.
What?
Lose a plane.
And so it's all just this trickle effect on this, A plus B plus C, adds up to this whole big thing. And it's devastating. And so I think before we start judging on fear and bigotry and racism, we really need to look at where those thought processes are taking us. I think of Grandma Pat and Grandpa Leon, and they were, they've been together forever.
Yeah.
Right? And that was back during a time when blacks and whites were not supposed to get married. How did that impact them? When I was in paralegal school, my favorite case was the Loving case.
Yeah.
And then they came out with a movie of it, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta watch this. And then I watched it and cried the whole time.
Yeah, I still
right? And because that case enabled interracial marriages. And without those interracial movements that happened, I wouldn't have any of my kids.
Yeah.
And it's
because both me and Anthony are mixed.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I think it impacts our world more than we think it does.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of stuff hidden that we don't realize is happening. And so really questioning those motives is a big deal.
Yeah.
So, and we all have personal stories. I experienced racism in Buffalo, Wyoming, and in Evanston, Wyoming. And those happened, Buffalo happened when I was like 18 or 19, and Evanston happened when you went to your dad's house. So you were like 5, 6. And I still hesitate to go to both of those places. Still, to this day. You know, we have a rodeo coming up in a couple of weeks, and if we don't stay in Sheridan, we have to stay in Buffalo. And I'm like, oh my God, please don't. I just don't want to be there. I just don't want to be there. We had a board meeting there, and my head was on a swivel the whole time. Mm-hmm. You know, and it impacts you. It impacts you as a person. You experienced it in Glen Rock. You saw the change.
Yeah.
You know, when we walk into a store together. You know, you saw it but didn't process it when you were in Head Start. You know, I'd go pick you up, and you're here for Esperanza Simmental? Yeah. I need to see your ID. And it wasn't that they just asked anybody for their ID. They did.
But it was
every single time.
Yeah.
You know, and God forbid if there was a substitute, because then I really had to show my card and my driver's license, and another person had to be like, no, that's her daughter.
Yeah, and it's just because I'm lighter.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just...
And I was a little white girl.
Right, yeah. With super blonde hair.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's why I still won't have blonde hair.
It's tragic, and those little micro or macro aggressions, however you see them, impact you on the day-to-day. Yeah. So I know that was a really, really, really tough episode. I really want to thank you for having the patience to really stick through this. This is a really big topic and can truly go on for hours on the things that we have experienced and have seen and dealt with. Mm-hmm. And so we just wanted to take a second to tell you to just please really think about your actions and your motivations and your thought processes behind these things, because it impacts so many people, and it might not be something that you're doing intentionally, but just really look at your words and your actions and what you're saying, because it makes a huge difference. It really does. Forever. Mm-hmm. Forever. So, all right. Well, we just want to thank Justin Bragg for being a sponsor and allowing us to put together this beautiful studio. I love it in here. Thank you for joining us. Join us for our next episode where we talk about learning from the young. I'm super excited about that one. That one is going to be a really big one. We get to learn about some youth who are in their end stages and the words of wisdom that they give this one particular nurse. So that's going to be really big. So any questions, comments, concerns, email or message on YouTube or any of our other social medias. We have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We have Gmail. Our Gmail account is smilegirl.don't-be-nervous@gmail.com. No apostrophe, no other punctuation, all run together, one word. If you want to be a speaker, feel free to reach out to any of us on our Facebook page, our private Facebook pages, and our phones. We will accept speakers even last minute. I was thinking about that. We can actually do that now. So just hit us up. Let us know what you think. Thank you for joining us. Once again, please share your stories. Put a note in the drop box below. Send us your stories, and I may ask for permission to publish them, because I think it is something that needs to be brought to people's attention if you have received any of these treatments. So it's unacceptable, it's unfair, and you just need to stop. So thank you for joining us. Please join us next week, where we will love to spend some more time with you. And thank you for coming. We love you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I gotta find my